Hello, Senor Space speaking.
How's it going, folks? It's Jack here.
Oh, editing Jack. I mean, this is a surprise. I've never heard you talk before. I just assumed you couldn't talk, really. What's up? You want to do it a summer transfer special? Why would we do that, though? What do you mean some of your favourite FM YouTubers are doing it and I'm not one of them? Oh, you mean as in I'm not one of them doing it, not I'm one of your okay. I was about to go for your neck there, son. You know what? Let's give it a go. I'm up to experiment. If the people like it, we'll do more of it. Oh, and I have to remind them about the sponsor of today's video. Yeah, I can do that. He wants me to remind you guys, sponsor of today's video is the like button. So, yeah, if you want to check out the sponsor, it's down below. It helps him out. It's how he wants to get a secretary or something. Right, mate. I'm going to leave you to it then. I'll send you some footage and you can edit it down. Good luck. How is it going, folks? It's Jack here, and welcome back. It's episode number 14 of Part 2 Primera. Today, something a little bit different. We're back. It's the 1st of July. This feels weird, but I thought it'd be nice to do kind of a transfer special of sorts. We're not going to go too deep into all the transfers and play through the entirety of the preseason this episode. I want to give you something to look forward to next time, but I thought it'd be quite nice with this season, with it being quite a big summer for us. You know, financially, things are going to be a bit tricky. To give you a behind-the-scenes look as to, I suppose, what goes on during the preseason, at least during the early phases, how I'm plotting my world domination, and all of that stuff. So as you can see here, the start of the transfer window has opened, and with that we have 6 players who have joined us, a few of which have actually joined since the end of the season. Some of these were already pre-agreed. Players like João Resende have joined us. Of course, we already agreed to sign him, an exciting young prospect who I'm keen to try and develop from Benfica. Pablo Martinez has joined us at centre mid, and then a couple of other players. Frank Angong has joined us from Barcelona. Bit of a punt, I suppose, for the future, but he's a freebie, £700 a week. Worst case scenario, he sits in the B team, and maybe we sell him on for some money down the line. Best case scenario, he comes in, shines, and we end up using him a little bit. I really like his versatility down the middle of the pitch. You can see we've got 3 other players here, the first of which is Hone Rojas, and we have signed him for 20 quid. I wish I was joking. I've signed a player for £20, everyone. Nevertheless, he is a top quality centre-back, and if we compare him with Oscar Heel, who of course is a regular first-team player this year, you can see he is quite a notable upgrade. Not perhaps quite as good with the ball at his feet, but from a defensive point of view, he's great. 22 years young, left-footed, natural left centre-back. I think it works out in our favour and helps address one of the areas in the pitch that I was keen to get sorted out this year. Anyway, 2 more players have joined us. Hayden McDonald, of course, the young Australian lad. He has gone straight into the under-19s. One for the future there. And elsewhere, Fernando has joined us as a backup goalkeeper. Unfortunately for us, Crespo has retired, as has Andy Carroll. Yeah, Andy Carroll has retired very, very early. Here you go. He has retired. He's left us. He is the worst scout in the world. I won't be bringing him back. I don't think we're on speaking terms. So in terms of where we're at going into this summer window, we have no money to spend, is perhaps the big headline here. £0 in transfer budget. We are negative £4 million just about in the bank balance. In terms of wage budget, we are currently £13,000 under it. So whilst we can look to sign players, we can't actually sign anyone for any money. And as a result, a big focus of things has become trying to sign players whose contracts are expiring. Now, there has been a little bit of interest in our players already this window. You can see here, Pablo Torre had bids from Sociedad and Valencia. And whilst they weren't bad bids, they weren't significant or enough bids for me to consider selling him. I'll be honest, he's not overly happy about the fact I'm not selling him. He's going to have to get over it a little bit. I would love to know in the comments how much you would sell Torre for. For me personally, I think he's pretty invaluable. I think it's nice to have a player like him who's homegrown at the club, who started with us, who we'd take all the way to the top. Naturally, I realise that with the current financial predicament, there may come a point in which we have to sell him. If I was going to let him go, I would want maybe £10 million for him. The bids we've had right now have been nowhere near that. I did try and bump up the offers that the teams, shoved our way. They immediately told me, we're not going to agree on a deal here, and left. And one player who we have also got a bid on is Nunes, who was the young striker we signed last year on a freebie. And whilst he's not a player we've lent on too much this year, there is a little bit of interest in him. He's got a really high minimum release clause. I'm keen to do that with all the young players that we have so I can sell them on my terms. You can see here, Resende is a couple of years older. There's not a world of difference between them, but with Nunes, I think if the right offer came in, I would look to sell him. You can see at the moment, we've got a bid of about £300,000. I'm going to be a bit cheeky here and just ask for 1.5 and see what they say. Because I don't know. As I said, he's not been a regular member of the first team, and whilst he could develop into this really good player, I don't feel like I'm selling an asset here who is going to weaken our first team because he's not been in the first team. It's just a case of, can we get $1 million for him? And the answer is, we can. I did try 1.1 million, but they weren't having any of it. But you know what? That is a really, really good fee. I think I have to accept that. It's not really a business I want to get into, selling my best players, but in instances like this, I think it has to be done. So, as well as Nunes going on the outs, you can see here have got a few players we're looking to bring in. Casado, I'm looking to sign from Barcelona as a young prospect who's quite a good centre mid. Unfortunately, with his contract expired, there's a fair few big teams involved, so it does feel very unlikely that we're going to end up signing him. We are, however, also looking at Hiroki Abe, who is available at Barcelona, and because we, of course, we're affiliated with Barcelona, we could be looking to loan this guy for free. I don't think there's anyone else immediately competing with us for his signature. I feel like he could be a really, really good, versatile attacking mid who can also slot in at striker. Yeah, this is a tough one because financially we are an absolute mess. More of a mess than we've ever been before. There really isn't money to spend. So you might be sat there wondering, Jack, what kind of preparation have you done going into the summer? Of course, the season wrapped up a little while ago now, about a month and a half ago, and I already knew about the financial predicament we were going to be in. So one step that I took, because we had a little bit of kind of scouting budget, I upgraded our tier to Europe. We're only going to have it for a month, so I've got to use it wisely. And I set contract status as expiring in 6 months. And then I looked at players in La Liga, the top flight of Portugal, Serie A, to see what players who had their contracts expiring in those major leagues might be interested in making the move over to us. And from that, I was able to build a shortlist. Now, whether or not all these players are going to want to sign for me is a different matter, but there's 77 players here and covering a wide variety of positions. And whilst, you know what, I've not got them all scouted yet and I'm not entirely sure what to make of them, it at least gives me a list of affordable players that even when we do run out of scouting budget money, and that is going to happen kind of soon, I have got all of these players on my radar still. When it comes to the first team, where are we looking to improve? I mean, this is the first kind of draft, I suppose, of the team going into the new year. I'm someone who, when I play Football Manager, during pre-season, I like to kind of plot out my 11 and work out where the weaknesses are. So in terms of this team, of course, Rojas is joining in at centre-back. He is the only one of the new signings who slots in. When I look across the team, really, I look at Kabir. I think he's good enough to step up this year and play in the next league up. Bicho, Torre, no concerns there. Mexica, kind of blew hot, kind of blew cold. The kind of player who, it wouldn't be a disaster if he ends up starting for us, potentially out on the right-hand side. At the same time, I do feel like it's an area that we could look to improve if the right option is out there and if we can afford it. In terms of centre mids, Di Vicente is a great player, but he did cause me a lot of headaches this year. So he is a player who I think I am going to look to move on this summer window. And in fact, we'll offer him out now. He's valued at 700k. When it comes to offering out players, I like to offer them out high and then I can lower it over time if bids don't come in. So we'll be a bit greedy. We'll start at £3 million because if we could sell him for that, between him and Nunes, the financial predicament that we're in would be solved. It probably is wishful thinking. Elsewhere in the team, Just Andy is not very happy that I didn't play him as a deep line playmaker. Apparently, I promised him he was going to play that. I have no recollection of this promise. I feel like we were in the pub together drunk after he signed his contract and I've promised him something that I don't recall. So he's not a happy camper, really. Ideally, I'd like to keep hold of him because he is a really good centre mid, but if he starts forcing a move, for as reliable as he's been, for as good as he was last year, I do kind of view him as a player who we probably could find a similar replacement for. I don't think he's this kind of step above everything else out there. So the centre mid department is one that, whilst we've only really just rebuilt it in the last year, based on what's transpired in the last 12 months, I do think it's an area that we could look to improve upon. And well, at the back, Machedo, I think I've decided I'm going to keep faith in him. Crespo has now retired, so the goalkeeping position was a problem. We've signed Fernando early on here just to be our backup goalkeeper. It was a free transfer. He did make a handful of appearances for the league that we're going to move into, and actually, he get 2 clean sheets in 4. So I think in terms of a backup, he could be useful for us. And while in terms of the defence, Carassa has extended his contract for a further 2 years, which is really, really great news. That is going to expire in 2024. So yeah, we've essentially got him as a right back for 2 years, which on the one hand I really like. On the other hand, a little bit scared that I'm putting so much faith and so much reliance in a right back who's in on loan who could, potentially get recalled at any moment. That said, the finances kind of dictate that I can't just go out and buy a right back. So a good right back backup option might be something we look towards. Of course, at left back last year, Lopez was the big standout man. You might remember we had Akieme, who was on loan from Barca. He didn't want to renew his loan. Neither did Lyle Foster. So he's left too. And my big concern basically is I'm losing some players, and I've lost some players, namely the loanees that we brought in, and I now need to try and replace them with more loanees of a slightly better quality without really having any money to play with. It's a challenging summer. And well, across the back line, I think there's room for general improvement. Of course, Lopez is currently our first choice left back. I have also got Herrero, who is significantly younger, who I could bring in. At 21 years old, he's got room to grow, lots of potential. There is a small part of me weighing up the possibility of maybe selling on Lopez if a sufficient bid came in, just because he is now 32 years old, and seeing what kind of alternative we could get. I wouldn't be too concerned if Herrero wound up being our starting left back for the season. I feel like going into this coming season, it's kind of a year of consolidation, a year where we pay off the last little bit of our debt, just make sure that we're strong and stable in the second tier of Spain, and then we can look to build off it once the finances, kind of get resolved. So anyway, that's where my head's at right at this moment. I'm going to play forward a little bit. We'll talk about different sticking points, dilemmas, decisions that I have to make as we encounter them. And of course, I'm hoping at some point during this video, the season is going to reset. We're going to get officially promoted, and we can have a better look at the league that we're going into, the quality that we should expect, and kind of where we're ranked in terms of pre-season billing by the media and by, the press and such, because I feel like until that happens, I don't really know what to expect for this new year. I think it's just a case of survival. I mean, at the very least, that's what the chairman thinks, as well as the financial issue. That could end up being a problem this year, especially if we get a takeover. Now, there's no rumours of one just yet. Our finances are apparently okay and not insecure. Not sure who's decided that, but yeah, there is a risk at some point during today's video we just get a transfer embargo if there's any kind of takeover, and I'm just not able to do business anymore. Okay, Di Vicente was not happy that I was forcing him out of the club, so he started to kick up a fuss. That's something that we've got to be wary of as we try and move on players. No bids for him to speak of yet, though. Maybe I was a little bit optimistic with the £3 million that I was expecting. I say expecting, I was hoping for it. There was no expectations there. So one player who has popped up on my radar here is Carlos Nieto. He was released by Real Zaragoza this year. You can see he played 28 games in the division we're going to go into. He wasn't phenomenal in them, but I'm looking at it, I'm thinking, at 26 years old, great work rate, really good, enjoyment of important matches, great consistency. Maybe dribbling and marking and positioning could be a little bit better. But if we just look to approach to sign him, I guess the big question becomes here, what kind of money is a player like Nieto going to want? With the promotion looming, I think there is going to be this expectation that we pay players more. And already, concerningly, I'm not getting good vibes, really, for a kind of player like this, a player who's likely to be our backup left back. I don't want to be spending a huge sum of money. I don't want to have any kind of crazy wage rises over time. He's asking for £7,000. To put that into context, our current highest earner is on £6,000, and it's Pablo. Then it's actually Cedric, who's on a lot of money. Would it be mad to sell Cedric? I mean, ultimately, I don't really want to go above that £6,000 threshold, especially because if I was to go above it, I would realistically be looking at signing 2 players all summer. I think there's probably better uses of that. Cedric. I mean, he's had a really good year, but He is on a lot of money, and I feel like at 27 with his injury proneness, maybe it'd be better to sell him whilst he's hot. I mean, he's valued at 600k. I'm going to offer him out for 2.5 and just see if anything nibbles. He is not a happy bunny about it. I mean, Lopez, can you solve this for me? He can solve it. I mean, it's a risk offering out a player like Cedric just because there's no visible interest in the player, but I don't want to, miss out on an opportunity maybe to make some money. You can see here, Di Vicente is wanted by a few clubs, but I think the teams he's wanted by are teams in the league that we're going into, so they're not going to have huge sums of money. No one wants Cedric. I was also looking at maybe cashing in on Cabanzon. There was a bit of interest in him in January. Unfortunately, if we just look at his injuries, he has missed a significant amount of football in the last kind of 6 months through, major long-term injury. In fact, he's been injured more often than he's been fit, which is definitely kind of knocked down, I think, his perceived value. I don't think I'd be willing to sell him for any less than 3 million, but I definitely have question marks over what he can actually achieve in our first team. So, if there was a good offer in place, even an offer of maybe 2.5 million, I'd certainly look to weigh it up. I do not see us in any world, unfortunately, being able to get rid of Cedric, even if I wanted to, which I'm not sure if I want to. I'm not sure if I need to. I suppose it comes down to where we're at. So I was just having a look here at players with contract status expired and players that my scouts have found. If we just go to assignments, they're just looking for kind of general players just in Spain. Obviously, we don't have a huge scouting range, so just looking within Spain seems like the smart thing to do. You can see there's a fair few names that get thrown up here, but I was looking at, which of these players perhaps have also been released over the summer, and there is actually a couple of players who I'm a little bit interested in. There's Leva here, who is 25 years old. I don't like the fact he's inconsistent, but he can play a few different positions. If we can't get Arbe on loan from Barcelona, he might be a player I go for in the wide area. He might even be a little bit better than Arbe, but I think the issue is he's probably coming in to be a backup. He wants to be a star player. It's just one of those things where affordability is not an option. There's not even any point in talking with him. I was also looking at Chadi Riyad here, who was released by Barcelona. Estimated wages aren't too hefty on him. He has had a few issues with injuries, though. Not any major injuries, just lots of little ones. FC Andorra have made a bid. There's a lot of teams interested, including teams like Almeria, who were promoted this year. Of course, we bumped into them in the Cup. They've now been promoted. So he's only asking for like £900, so he could be a player that we end up going for. Of course, I don't want to have to do any of the wage rise bits. I don't want to kind of riddle ourselves with long-term kind of debt through players who are expecting more and more money. We've upped the minimum release clause a tad. Let's go for £900 and see what he says. 950? Okay. It's a little bit more than I'd like to pay for him, but it's the kind of player where we'll put a bid in for him and I can always cancel it. I think that's a really important thing. The actual whole reason I came back at this moment in time was for two players that I was looking at. Two attacking options, incidentally, not really an area I was looking to address, but we've got here Jorge Fernandez Alonso. He is 19 years old. He looks like a good little striker. He was playing in our league last year. He actually got 13 goals in 32. He is 19 years old. He only wants to be a squad player. I am wondering if he could be the Foster replacement. Potential to be a La Liga 2 player. That does put me off him slightly, but I think we'll approach to sign him and just see if we can get a good deal. Really, I'm looking to bring him in to be a bit of a backup, as is the case with a lot of these players here. If I'm making offers for them and then you never hear me talk about them again, just assume it fell through. Just assume they asked for too much money and I lost my patience with them. So the other player I wanted to mention who is Spanish is Balde here. He was actually playing for Sampdoria last year. He's not played a great deal of first-team football in his career thus far. In his first year, you can see here, he got 13 goals in 36 in the third tier of Italy. He is 23 years old, so he's not the youngest player in the world. I'm just looking at him, though, thinking he could actually be the Foster replacement. If we compare the two players here, you can see that they offer slightly different aspects to their game, but I don't think there's a massive world of difference between them. Of course, we were very lucky in the sense that we were loaning Foster for not a great deal of money. I think it worked out being something like £300 a week if you included the kind of monthly fee of £1,000 that we were paying. I'm just wondering how much Bolde is going to realistically expect here. Probably bringing him in to be a squad option, potentially even a player who ends up playing in the B team. My concern being already, I think he's going to ask for a lot of money. I feel like there's a theme emerging here. There are just players who want way too much. My kind of what I thought was my great plan of shortlisting all these players who play for bigger clubs, what's actually ended up happening is a lot of them just basically expect the money that they were on. We don't have the kind of money they were on in their respective top flights. I'm just looking through some of the scout recommendations here, and Aaron Pierre is actually a player who I had on my radar previously. I think he was playing for Shrewsbury. Yeah, he was. He looked pretty good when my scouts looked at him back then. They're still rating him quite highly. Okay, he is happy to be a squad player. The fact that he has not disclosed how much he wants has me a little bit concerned. Estimated wage demands of 3.8 to 5k. So I think we'll go in with 3.8 and see what he says. I will include a top promotional wage rise for him. This is going to be a long, tricky summer, isn't it? I feel like I've done a lot of recording and I'm going to have to cut out certain bits. But to give you an overview of where we're at right now, on the whole, I'm quite happy with our squad balance. I think our squad is okay. They look promising, don't they? With the obvious exception of the goalkeeping position. We've got a good, few replacements in each and every spot in the team. Obviously, with the financial restrictions we're under, it's going to be tricky. I almost wonder if this summer is going to be more dictated by the sales that we make rather than the purchases, which is not really where I thought we were going to be. So we have had another bid for Torre, this time 2.3 million from Mallorca. It's just not enough money. As I said, like 10 million and I might consider it, but obviously a team like Mallorca are just not going to have 10 million to spend. We're not in administration. We're not at this financial point where I have to sell players or the end of the world is going to just start happening. I don't know. Maybe I'm being too sentimental here. I just feel like Pablo, he's homegrown at club. The fans love him. I love him. I've really made him a focal point of what we're building here. And as part of the longer term project, I just feel like it'd be a massive, massive mistake to let him go. I don't know if this is a sign of the desperation that I'm in now, but what I've ended up doing is just trialling a load of players who were on my short list of players that we might look to sign. One player who I'm quite interested in is Haro here, because he is actually formerly of Racing. He started his career with them. You can see he played 25 games in La Liga, moved to the Bundesliga, maybe struggled a little bit in the last few years playing for Malaga, but would be available as a freebie. I guess it boils down to the wages again. I really don't want to be paying him more than £6,000. I'm kind of accepting at this point that for first-team players, I might have to revise my expectations in terms of the spend that we would have to make to significantly improve the first team. And he wants £13,000 a week. It's so difficult. I wish I was joking. I have sat and gone through every single one of these players. The ones who I thought, you might be good enough for me to sign. You might actually add into the team. They're asking for too much. Diaby is a player who I would love to have signed to be a ball-winning centre mid for us. He wants £9,000 a week. And then there are just players who they're not quite good enough. They're not improvements on what I've already got. They're asking for slightly more money. There isn't really a reason to bring them in. So it does feel like this whole kind of shortlist that I made might be another brick wall that we're just going to butt our head against. I've got some good news. I've got some bad news. The good news is that Zach has had a bid of 500k for him, and whilst I do think he's a good little player for us, I am struggling to argue against the idea of making £500,000. I think I'm going to accept it now. The bad news being that I was going to accept it on the assumption that Arbe was going to join us, and Hiroki has decided that he doesn't want to come to Santander. He's not a fan of our reign. So, yeah, the plan was that I'd sell Zach and then Arbe would come in and just replace him. And, we get a player in for free on loan. We make a bit of money to help out the finances. I mean, half the plans come together, but it leaves me kind of with more dilemmas and, decisions to make than I really need at this moment in time. Okay, Osasuna have just come in with an even bigger bid, so I managed to negotiate with them and get 900k. So even if Arbe isn't happening, I think Zach is going to be leaving. I will now just reject that cheaper offer. I'm kind of coming to the conclusion here that what I'm probably going to need to do is wait things out. When players are first released, they have kind of set wage demands, and then over time, if they aren't picked up by clubs, their expectations kind of drop. And I'm hoping that once they drop, there are going to be a few affordable options, or even players that I've already identified, they don't find clubs that I am able to go on and sign because just other people don't want them. Concerningly, it feels like every day there's a new inbox item about how players who I had on my short list, whose contracts were expiring, playing in some of the top leagues, they are getting offers from elsewhere and will not be free agents by the time I need them to be. Okay, Chani Riyad has turned me down. He has turned me down to go to FC Andorra, despite the fact I offered him twice as much money. Mahika, now is not the time to ask for a new contract, Lopez. Can you solve this for us? Lopez is turning out to be a really valuable asset at the moment. Fair few players coming and complaining. It really highlights, the importance of having influential players. You can see here, Nunes, we are going to have to sell him for $1 million. I don't really want to sell him for $1 million, but from a financial perspective, I don't think we can afford not to. The only issue really being is that we get 100k of it to spend in the transfer budget. Yeah, it's not the kind of sale that's going to open up some financial flexibility for kind of moves in, but it is going to help just a little bit with this debt, which is getting worse and worse and worse. And I have got to fulfill the board's objective of repairing this financial damage. I don't necessarily think I've done a particularly good job of that over the first 2 years. So trying to turn a corner today. Okay, so the date is the 10th of July. And with that, the season preview was updated. We are now in a new division. Apparently, we're the 13th best team. That is higher than I expected to be, if I'm being completely honest. That's not to say that we're suddenly promotional favourites. We've got no one in the Media Dream 11, and the board are still quite reserved with things. They just want us to fight bravely against relegation. The pre-season billing has given me a little bit of hope. Truth be told, going into a league like this, I've not managed at this level before. I've not managed in the second division of Spain. So I don't really know what to expect. It's also worth noting that we're the 13th favourites to get promoted. There are all the B teams who can't get promoted, who just aren't given odds. So whilst it does say 13th here, wouldn't surprise me if all the B teams are better than us. So realistically, we're the 17th best team in the league. But it looks quite nice when we're 13th. We look a little higher up than we probably should be. I was just looking at Marbella's team. They are the team predicted to finish bottom. Their key player is Redru here, who is a left wing back. So he's their key man. So he's a little bit behind the kind of players that we have. Of course, you can see here Ponfradina, who were promoted with us. And to be fair, gave us a bloody good run last year. They're predicted to finish second bottom. That's concerning, considering we only finished 3 points ahead of them. They've got Quintana as their key man, who is a really, really good striker for this level. I feel like for us, Carbia is a man we are going to hope can step up. I think when you look at him, he looks like he has the quality for this level. Truth be told, in his career, he's not really performed at this level on the few occasions where he's been given a chance here. But maybe under us, things are going to be different. Finally, some good news that I didn't actually know was a thing. We're going to get £5 million for playing in La Liga 2 this year. So maybe the finances aren't as completely ruined as I thought they were. That is money that will go quite a long way, although we're not going to be able to reinvest that into the team. A lot of that is just going to be spent, obviously, on ourselves and just the debt that exists rather than, improving the squad in any meaningful way. Our first game of the season is going to be against Ponfradina, who we were promoted with. That's kind of exciting. I think that's quite nice, actually, to have a team that we're familiar with. Hopefully a team we can beat to get our season off on the right foot. That first game is in a month's time. Obviously, we have a month now to sort out this squad. And when I look at it on the whole, you know what? It's a squad full of players. We've got a 27-man team. I think that would have to be trimmed down a little bit. Although, actually, no, the under-18s don't need to be registered, so we should be okay. You might have noticed that Simeone's son has been, promoted to the first team this year. The kind of player who, if I maybe make a good signing, he might end up being shuffled back down. Di Vicente, I'm still trying to sell. Zachary, we've got that bid for that could result in some nice money. It's going to be a long pre-season still. This video obviously was something a little bit different. I think I'm going to wrap it up here so that you've seen kind of my initial approach to the summer. You can kind of see where we're at, how I'm kind of working things behind the scenes. As I said at the top of this video, this is something that's kind of different to anything I've done before. I've actually recorded about an hour and a half of footage. You are going to see a very small fraction of that. But hopefully it's kind of a little bit interesting. It gives you a bit of an insight. If this video performs particularly well, if you guys seem to love it in the comments and stuff, I would more than happily do this for future seasons. And I'm sure year on year, I'd start to refine the format a little bit more, work out how to do things. I do think it's quite nice, though, to come to the club, show you a video, on the 1st of July as players are arriving, kind of midway through our plotting and scheming. I think in terms of first team quality, we've got it there. Like, if I wasn't to make any further dealings, I don't think it would necessarily be a bad transfer window. I do just look at our finances and think I probably need to raise a little bit of money from somewhere. And of course, we're always going to look at ways we can improve the first team. In terms of where I'd like to improve the first team, I think left back is a kind of maybe area. I think it's centre mid. I really don't trust Di Vicente. He was really good last year, but the discipline issues were issues. They lost us games. And of course, Mojica, bit of a question mark perhaps about him out on the right-hand side. Either way, I'm going to wrap things up here for today. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, do drop a like on it. Let me know what you make of the business so far. Was there a player I looked at that I should have been willing to spend more money on? How much would you sell Pablo Torre for? Let me know down below. And other than that, it is me, Jack. I will see you guys on the next one. Season 3, it starts tomorrow. I'll see you then.